Greetings, greetings, family. We are live. Sister Shanice in the house, coming to you live and direct. So we are going to be having another fantastic, bombastic show here on the Sister Shanice show. So absolutely delighted to have you in the house. And my guest is backstage. He is rearing to go. So just waiting for you, the family, to come through the door, and then we are going to be off to a great, great show indeed. So family, how have you been? How has this strong been for each and every one of you? I've been having some wonderful shows. For those of you that joined me yesterday, let me get the details of that show up. Wow, wow, wow. It was a phenomenal conference. We had our brother from Haiti, our brother Jean Clebet, and guests on my show yesterday. We had a conference, and there is just so much going on in Haiti right now, family. I need each of you to just take a listen to what our brother Jean Clebet had to say as well. And if you are able to support him in any way whatsoever, then, you know, please do so. Jean Clebet, he's from Mondu, Haiti. Mondu in Haiti. And our people out there are campaigning and protesting against the American government because right now the American government is just giving our people hell. You know, they're keeping them in a state of impoverishment. They're extracting the wealth and the mineral and the resources from out of their land. They don't want to give them a fair share for those resources. And then, to make it worse, when our people protest, they get the army to shoot live ammunition at them. Right now, there are 3 sisters who they've got to bury because they were shot dead whilst protesting. And so, you know, our people are trying to stop some sham of an election process from taking place. And we need to stand by and we need to support them. So for you to get to know what's going on, do check out the live video conference that we did yesterday. It's entitled All African People's Liberation Conference. Take a listen to our brother, hear what's going on in Haiti right now, because we've got to stand with our brothers and sisters, because Haiti will be great again. As we know, Haiti, you know, was the first of the Caribbean islands to free themselves from the shackles of enslavement. And they did that formidably. So we want to rise up the memory of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, Bookman, Doty, Toussaint Louverture, Philippe Fatiman, you know, and all the others that were involved in that Haitian revolution. And it seems to be an unwritten rule amongst the Western world to ensure that they continue punishing Haiti for that hugely successful revolution. So, you know, we need to let our brothers and sisters in Haiti know that they do not stand alone and that we do stand with them. So family, as you come through the door, please do let us know that you're in the house. Let us know where in the world you are watching us from. You know, it'd be an absolute pleasure to get a greeting from you. And I'm going to be bringing in our brother, Dr. Kheftusa, in just a moment or two. I know he's getting ready backstage. Dr. Kheftusa, if you can hear me, please make sure that you have the link as well to the event that's happening on Saturday. We've got a great event coming up on Saturday, family, and I certainly hope that each and every one of you are going to be joining us for the event on Saturday. So I can see that we've got a few family members in the house already. Rise up, rise up. Brother Adrian, good to have you in the house. He said, yes, finally got you live, sister. Yeah, man, we're there. Same time. Yes, so every Wednesday. All right, my brother Adrian, great to have you in the house as well. Where in the world are you watching us from? Rise up, Sheput as well, saying greetings. Kimani in the house. Rise up, rise up. Starshine Productions in the house. Greeting us from Haiti. Wow, wow, wow. You know, Haiti will be great again. Haiti will be great again. Welcome, Haru. Glad to have you in the house. Adrian, yes. Welcome, welcome. La Coco, welcome. Sister Afrijamo, watching us all the way from Ghana in the house. Welcome, welcome. Super Black in the house. Oh, from London, great to have you in the house. Faru, great to have you in the house. Watching us all the way from Silver Spring in Maryland. Let me go back straight stage and see if our brother Dr. Kheftusa is ready to come forward and join me here on the big stage. Go on, Dr. Kheftusa. We want to see you in the house, and looking forward to the presentation that you've got lined up for us today. S.A. Smith, we welcome you. There's Dr. Kheftusa. Welcome, welcome, Dr. Kheftusa. How are you doing?
I'm fine, thank you, sister.
Oh, great to have you in the house. The last time you were with us, you were dropping some gems, some bombs. Oh my gosh, I remember I just had to zip. I just had to listen. I was trying to make notes, but then I needed to just listen because, family, we've all got to learn so that we can teach. And then those who we can teach can then in turn learn from us and go ahead and do some teaching as well. And wow, are we in for some lessons tonight? So Dr. Kheftusa, the last time you were with us, you know, like I said, you just lit up the stage, you lit up the platform. Are you going to be lighting us up again today with some more knowledge, some huge gems? What's the plan for today?
Yes, sister. Firstly, to all of the audience, welcome. You found yourself in a peaceful place, and we wish for you blessings without number. I'm really glad to be back on the Sister Shanice show. It was such a great experience, and one of the beautiful things that I noticed in the comments was that people were talking about reading the books that I mentioned, and that's one of the most important things that we need to read and study. So any opportunity that I get, I'm intending to blow it up. And tonight, I'm going to go in, and we'll see what happens.
Woo, woo, woo. Looking forward to you going in. Right, let me bring myself back on the front. Yeah, so you heard it, family. It's going to be going in tonight. So get ready, get ready, get ready. Get your notebooks ready. You know, whatever device you use to make your notes, make sure you're ready. Let everyone know that we are live, and they need to join us right now because we're going to be getting off to an early start. Because I know sometimes, you know, when the introduction's a bit too long, some of you say, come on, man, we want to hear from the speaker. Come off of the stage. I mean, you know, it's a whole week we wait for come past stage and you want to run me off. Oh, rise up, Kimani, rise up, Sister Afrijamo, rise up, Brother Adrian, rise up, each and every one of you that's in the house today. Please put the word out, let everyone know that we are live. So, yes, some of you may well have met our brother before, but there may well be some of you who are meeting our brother, Dr. Kheftusa, for the first time. And if you are in for a wonderful, wonderful educational surprise. Our brother is a historian, Pan-Africanist, and cultural scientist. And he has been an astute and profound analysis of the myriad of issues that affect us as a people globally. So he is a man who has a heart for our community. He's been lecturing for over 20 years. I know you say he doesn't look old enough. I was telling him last time, you know, and he told us the secret as well to his youthful look. So if you want the secrets, you're going to have to go back to his last show to hear all of that. And, you know, he's been influenced, family, by some of our greats like Yusuf Ben Shockerman, Dr. John Henry Clark, Dr. Malena Karenge, and Dr. Amos Wilson, Professor James Small, Ra Unnafer, Amen. Wow. Dr. Kheftusa, you know, he offers us his own unique style. But, you know, as he said, he's been influenced by some of the great. So he's got his own unique presentation style and a holistic approach to issues that in fact impact us as a family. So we're in for a great comprehensive lecture tonight, family, on a topic that he has selected for us. But before we go into the topic for today, I would like to give our brother the opportunity to share with us information about his new website, and then secondly, information about the conference that you've got coming up on Saturday. And I need each and every one of you that's watching to be in attendance. And I need you to post the link for Saturday as well, my brother.
Okay.
For everybody, so I can copy it and paste it into the chat. So while you're telling everybody about your new website, it'd be great. Could you bring it up? Can you bring?
Okay, so what I was actually going to do, because I've on my first 3 slides, I've got the posters, and then I can talk them.
Oh, awesome.
On the slides already. So if you want me to share the slides, then I can do that.
Okay, all right, yes, go ahead, share the slide, tell us about Saturday's conference, tell us about your website, show us a bit of it. You know, it's beautiful, family, it really is.
So as you can see, I'm speaking on behalf of Saankh Productions, which I direct. The website details are the top link, and then we have an Instagram detail, and we have the email detail. Now, when you go onto the website, you'll see what Saankh is all about. And part of what we do at Saankh is what we're doing right now, which is to educate African people for us, by us. And the idea here is to really take us to the next level of consciousness. And I want us to really think about who we are and how we ended up in the position that we are currently in. And so what I'm doing this Saturday, this works, we have a lecture kind of interview. Look, Sister Shanice got worried. She got shook when I said lecture. We have an interview, Sister Shanice. And I have to say something about Sister Shanice. I didn't know her before. I met her a couple of months ago. And I have to say, this is a beautiful sister. This is a warrior. She's made in the image of Yah Santua. She's just a sister who loves her people and does the work week after week after week. And so because I met her, I said, you know what? I want to have a free event to open up Saankh a new beginning, which you'll hear about what we're going to do on the day. And I want to interview Sister Shanice, because I want to find out about her. She's always asking the questions, but on Saturday, I will be asking the questions so we can dig deep into this wonderful and powerful and beautiful sister that loves us so much that she works to put on these shows. But also, in addition to that, my other find of this year, Dr. Clyde Winters. Now, Dr. Winters is a scholar that I had not known about, which really bothered me, because when I saw the body of work that this great man has done, I said, you know what? I have to get in touch with Dr. Winters, which I did. And I began to establish, or I'm beginning to establish, a relationship with one of our African giants. And one of the things about Dr. Winters is that he does not just stick to what I would call Afrocentric 101 orthodoxy. He goes in, and to the point where he says things, and I'm like, wow. Because I've read the top scholars, but what Dr. Winters brings to the table forces me to rethink some of the concepts and context in which we talk about some of these issues. So 7 p.m. start, Saturday, the 3rd of September. This, again, is a free event. I will be speaking in the beginning, but we're really going to focus on Sister Shanice, and Dr. Clyde Winters will be giving us a little introduction of what he will be doing on the 17th of September. Okay. I think I might have gone back to, I'm not sure where the other poster's gone. No, Okay, let me go back. Okay, so I think we've had a slight problem there. But
Oh,
I will get somebody to put in the details in the chat so you can see it. But on
excellent.
the 17th of September, we will be having a lecture by the one and only supreme Dr. Clyde Winters. And what is he going to be talking about? The Kushite origins of ancient Kemet. We're going to be looking at the southern beginnings of ancient Kemet and how it is the Kushites, not Mesopotamia, not aliens, but the Africans from the inner part of Africa who built that great civilization called ancient Kemet. And Dr. Winters is going to lead us through that whole discussion. And personally, I cannot wait. But seeing as I have learned to be patient, I'm going to have to be.
Oh, thank you so much. My brother, it's a real honor and a privilege to be invited onto your platform and to be interviewed on the same platform as the great Dr. Winters. I'm absolutely blown away. I'm doing Dr. Winters' research course at the moment. And yeah, if you take off the slideshow, then we can
No problem.
get me back on the screen as I talk, and then we'll bring back the slideshow in a little while. Yeah, so I'm privileged to be one of the students that's learning right now at the feet of Dr. Winters, and he is a phenomenal researcher. And family, if you want to, get more from Dr. Winters, then every Thursday evening, if you log on to Dr. Reverend Shock's YouTube channel, our brother Dr. Winters delivers an original presentation every Thursday. He is constantly researching and he has a unique way of researching information. And this is, what I'm learning from him at the moment. So when he comes with any information about who we are in history, he's coming from not just from the historical, but he'll bring the documentation, the archaeological, the legal, the genetic research. He'll just piles it on, and he teaches us where we can go to find all this information as well. And so he's incredible. So my brother, Dr. Kheftusa, thank you so much for inviting me onto your platform. I'm honored. And to be also alongside Dr. Winters, it's like, wow. Looking forward to it indeed. Right, so our family is coming through the door. Let me just see who else we've got in the house, see if they've got any messages for us before we start. And then I'm going to hand straight over to you, my brother, to kick the evening's presentation off. So Kimian is saying, yes, the brother has a style of delivery very inspiring. Yes, indeed. Anna, welcome, says, heard this brother before. Awesome speaker. Yes. Adrian saying, really beautiful, full of energy. Yeah, love it, Anna. Love. Super Black saying Sister Shanice is absolutely the real deal. Oh, thank you, Super Black. Enough love, Black Hatcher. He says, I can definitely vouch for her. Thank you so much. Hiru says, a beautiful, powerful queen, Sister Shanice. Thank you so much. Sending positive vibes, vibrations. Brother Adrian's confirming what we're saying. He says, I know Dr. Winters' family in England. Wonder if he's a long distance relative. Oh, no, he says, I know a Winters family. Well, you know what, family? I'm learning from our history of Scotland and Ireland that there were hundreds of thousands of us that actually lived in Scotland and Ireland that was transported from Scotland and Ireland during the 1500s to the Americas and to the Caribbean. So families may well have been split up. And when we were transported, we took our names with us. And so there may well be some Winters in Canada and some in the Caribbean who are now here in the UK that could be long distance relations. We got to do the ancestry trail and go back to find that out. Welcome, Mr. Chongo. Great to have you in the house as well. Mr. Chongo's linking us all the way from Zambia. Yes, yes. Yeah, all righty. I've nattered away enough. I'm not going to disappoint and upset my audience today by staying on too long. I'm going to get out of the way right now. Hand over to our very special guest today, Dr. Kheftusa. Over to you, my brother.
Okay, so let me just say that it is really important to understand. And as I go through this lecture, I want you to think about the concept of family. I want you to think about the concept of family as African people. Now, one of my greatest heroes, Malcolm X, Brother Omawale, meaning the son who returns home. He received that name when he went to Nigeria, and he said it was the greatest honor of his life. So while many people refer to him as El Hajj Malik Shabazz, his African name was Omawale, the son who returns home. And Malcolm is a major piece in terms of the development of my consciousness. But before I go into Malcolm, I want to dedicate this lecture to a Dr. Amos Wilson, a man who I was blessed to meet when I was young in New York, and who taught me a very important aspect about leadership in our community. I remember going to Professor Amos Wilson's house. He lived in the Bronx, and he didn't even live in a house. It was an apartment building. And here was this great professor who was sacked from numerous universities because of his stance in terms of his Afrocentric scholarship. Here was this great professor living in a very small box apartment in the Bronx that had a hole in the floor. And I remember saying to myself, being that I used to go to lectures and see hundreds of us supporting and cheering this man, I couldn't understand in my mind, how could this brother live in such a, I won't say humble, because that's not really the truth. It was really a poor state in comparison to the work that this man did. And so I want to dedicate this lecture to Professor Wilson, but I also want us to learn the lessons of leadership sometimes that come to us when we're in this community. And we must learn then to honor and respect our people, not while they're alive, but to maintain their life. Because here's a man who died at 53, 54, I believe. And so much energy, so much of what he could teach left early because we did not take care of this brother. And so I dedicate my lecture this evening to Professor Amos Wilson. And then we have Malcolm. Malcolm, who said, our liberation requires a liberated mind. Malcolm, who gave up his life for us. Lest we forget that these people paid a price for leading and teaching our people. And that is something that we must begin to understand, and we must begin to focus on maintaining the lives of our great minds. So, Professor Wilson speaks, quote by Amos, names and how people are named are very potent indicators of the consciousness of the people and a potent indicator of the relationship those people have with the world. And I want us to reflect on this, people. What are our names? What language do we speak? And I'll get deeper into this. But when you look at names and languages, you're looking at power. Because your name has a whole historical signature to it. And we must understand that. So Amos really talked about how people are named. How did we get these names? Who gave us these names? And why did they give us these names? These are very important questions that we need to focus on in order to understand where I'm going to be going in this presentation. And I have to say, I do want to take it there politely, because I like to be polite, because we need to engage in critical thinking, my brothers and sisters. And let's not think that when I talk, I'm talking to you and not talking to myself. We are all part of this collective, and we are only as strong or as weak as our weakest link. So I'm not talking to you and not talking to me. We talk collectively. So let's look at this concept of self-hatred and self-defeat. So Amos says, when you look at it from the point of view of psychology, you can almost say that a majority of our behavior, even our so-called thinking behavior, often is in defense of feelings and is being used to justify feelings. Now, I've been taught that often your feelings are not your friends. Often what you see with us is a reaction to how we feel. Many of us could go back in our life and go back to the feeling that we got when we felt like we were rejected by the mainstream society. And often that feeling, those childhood feelings, those memories often become part of a whole psychology. And for some people, that feeling pushes them to try to assimilate. And for others, it pushes them to say, well, I don't want to be a part of the majority. But the point is, feelings may play a major part in your behavior. And what we need to understand is that behaviors are created. They don't just spring up, they're created by particular events. And so that's really what we want to look at. How do we behave? So what did Malcolm say? Malcolm X on Afro-American history. If you haven't read that book, buy it. It's one of the deepest little books that you can see. Malcolm said here in the American context, when we were first brought here, we had a different language. And these names in this language identified the culture that we were brought from, the land that we were brought from. But once our names were taken and our language was taken, our identity was destroyed. In other words, then, when you look at a people and you look at their names, you then look at the culture, and then you look at the language. So the names that we had before we were enslaved were like containers. They contained our culture, they contained our language, and because of that, they also contained our consciousness. So never believe that names are irrelevant. Names and the naming process represent power. That's why if you remember back to Genesis in the so-called Bible, Adam is given the ability to name all other things in existence. And by naming them, that is a power indicator or an indication of power. So let's be very clear here. Naming, language, culture are three very important ingredients in terms of shaping your behavior. So when we look at the global African community, think about the names that we wear globally. And again, this is not just within the context of the diaspora, this is on the continent. I remember the first time that I went to Ghana and I met my brothers and sisters there, and I'd say to them, what's your name? And they would say John, or they would say Alice. And then I'd say, well, what's your real name? So that their African name became secondary to their European name. And then they couldn't understand. They said, well, if some of you're coming from America or the diaspora, and you're having these African names, and yet we're calling ourselves John and the rest of it. So we need to understand that names are significant, but also languages. Because when you speak a language, you have a particular worldview. Then what about the way you dress? What about your education? What about your ceremonies? What about your architecture? What about your scientific inventions? What about your relationships? What about your religion? What about your worldview? So, in other words, when you look at Africans across the globe, do we see a strong and self-affirming African cultural consciousness? Do we see that? Or do we see ourselves as almost existing outside of our own consciousness? And this is one of the reasons why Molefi Asante wrote that book, Afrocentricity, because what he wanted to do was move us back into the center of our own reality. So what we're talking about here is the consciousness of African people across the globe. That when we go and we speak to our people, where do we affirm who we are? So, do we have then, and some of you are going to say, oh, my brother, you really said that. Do we have, among those of us who say that we're conscious, an over-reliance on history and religion? I know I'm going to have to explain that. I see Sister Shanice already nodding. She said, brother, you didn't say that. First of all, remember, it's a question. The first problem with history is we don't really understand history. History is not a linear thing. History, I say, is like a spiral. It's like a DNA spiral. But to understand history is not to say history is in the past. History is now. You make history. But many of us study history today, but we're not making history. Because history is in the past. But when you truly understand, you must become the maker and shaper of your own history. And you can only do that when you get a grasp of your behavior. Oh, what about religion? Now, it is said that the word religion means to return back, to bind back legally to the essence from whence we came. That's one explanation. But we know that religion for African people has had and has a major impact on who we think we are. So what I'm suggesting here for us to think about, do we need a more holistic approach whereby we master other subjects such as psychology? In other words, you can define yourself as religious or a believer in a religion, but because you duck psychology, you fail to analyze part of your religious consciousness and the way in which it has a negative impact on your life. In other words, you become a so-called believer, or you're moved by faith. And when somebody comes along and begins to analyze your so-called religion, you react emotionally. That is why I used to love the lectures of Professor Amos Wilson. I remember one time we was at a lecture and he said, some of you want to make Jesus black. He said, you know what? It makes more sense to keep him white. And I remember the reaction. I remember the reaction. A brother got up with dreads at the end. He said, you saying the brother wasn't the brother? Now, I want to say to us, how many of the people in the Bible can you find a clear historical record of? Where were they buried? Where did they come from? What did they do? I know my people, but we got to be real today. You're fighting over religion, but you may not understand that the religions that we practice were given to us, even though when you read Dr. Ben's work, you will find that the major religions came from Africa. But what they were turned into were not in the best interest of Africans. So we need to study psychology. We need to study economics. Many of us who are conscious have to say it. We are poor students of economics. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said that you have the 5%, the 10%, and the 85%. The 85% represent those people who are deaf, dumb, and blind. The 10% are the wicked slave masters, and the 5% are the poor righteous teachers. And what the messenger said was that the 5%, those people that have consciousness, most of the time, not the money. So you have the consciousness, but you don't have the resources to utilize that consciousness in an effective way. And remember, money is just a resource. And then we've got politics. Now, as soon as I say politics, people go, electoral politics. No, 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 no. Politics is about power and power dynamics. So if you don't study politics, then you don't understand power and the leverage of power. So, for example, many religious people don't want to deal with politics, thinking that even the religion that they practice was not given to them or forced on them based on power. So you can't really study or understand religion without understanding power. Okay. So I maintain then that we do not have a holistic understanding of root knowledge. Root knowledge. Here in the diagram, we see power, we see history, we see spirituality, we see economics, and then in the center, we see culture. Now, some of you say, well, God comes first. But you will never hear of or conceive of God, Neter. The Most High God is always filtered through a cultural context. So when you're talking about religion and spirituality, what culture are you dealing with? That's why, for example, if you're Muslim and you pray to the east towards Mecca. That has a cultural impact. The language Arabic becomes key then. It shapes your culture. If you're a Christian, then you have Christian names. Natural? You have a Christian name because part of Christianity as it's come down to us has come through culture. Now it's interesting that the so-called biblical context happens in the area of Africa, and that area referred to as the Middle East, which is just an extension of Africa, but it's filtered through the cultural context of Europe, and Europeans wasn't even there. Interesting. So in other words, what I'm saying is you can't understand spirituality without culture. You can't build a family or a liberation struggle without the understanding of economics. You cannot even practice the right spiritual culture if you don't know history. If you don't know history, and you can't see culture as a power system. That's why I said I'm a political and cultural scientist. Culture is power. Language is power. Economics is power. Spirituality is power. But the thing is, as Africans, we have problems leveraging these things because we don't really question the creation of these concepts and ideas that move us so much. So we need to understand that culture is a key part of who we are. And if culture is a key part of who we are, then what culture do you practice? And I want to say this before I get off of this slide. You see, many people, you hear Black people say, it's a cult, it's a cult. We use this term cult. What is a cult? Christianity used to be a cult, you know. What is a cult? A cult is a system that has not become mainstream. So before, Christianity was wedded to the Roman emperor. Remember, the Roman Catholic Church? So it became wedded to the Greco-Roman concept of life. Before that happened, Christianity was called a cult. So many of our African systems, we now call them cults. And we demonstrate our disdain for them by saying that, because when we use the term cult in the common language of today, what we mean is it's not really European, or it's not really serious. It's tied up with that black magic or that so-called voodoo and all the scary things that you were told to run from when you were young. So when you hear the word cult and you see black people, you run. But you never see Christianity as being a cult. Oh my days, Sister Denise ain't gonna invite me back, you know.
You are what I tell you, what you're dealing with some of the issues that we so need to deal with as a people. I mean, you're just hitting the nail on the head, and we've really got to think about whose culture are we practicing? Is it really ours? I mean, I'm with you all the way on this, my brother.
Right, my sister.
Loving it.
That's right. I got my protection, you know. So I wanted to deal with this thing about information versus knowledge, because many of us are so tied up into having information, and we don't know the difference between being informed and being knowledgeable. We confuse the ability to gather information with the possession of knowledge. You see, knowledge is foundational. It's foundational. Knowledge is more than data. You get a computer, you put data in there. Knowledge requires the ability to both manifest and live in alignment with the truth. In other words, as they used to say in the 5% nation, or the nation of gods and earths in America, you have to show and prove. If something is true, then you have to manifest it on the physical plane to a certain extent. Got to watch it, because I know we'll have some people saying, oh, but that's not quite right. But there is always a deeper level. But the point is this: where are our temples? Where are our schools? Where are our colleges? But I'm going ahead of myself. Let me back up. So what I'm saying here is that knowledge requires the ability to both manifest and live in alignment with the truth. In other words, when you're knowledgeable about something, it's almost as easy as breathing. It means you're able to live and act automatically in that way. When you have information, that doesn't mean you can practice it. That doesn't mean that becomes part of your life. So many of us are more informed as opposed to knowledgeable. You can be informed about diet, but if you can't live that diet, then you don't have the true knowledge. You can be informed about being African, but if you can't manifest that knowledge, then it's information. So in other words, there's a relationship between the knowledge and the truth, but we can't live truth unless we have the power to manifest that truth in our lives. And as easy as it sounds, it ain't easy. And that is why many of us go back and forth in terms of our consciousness. 1 minute we believe, next minute we don't know what we are or who we are. You used to be Shabaka. Now you're Carl again. You used to be Afua. Now you're Rachel. We slip back and forth through these moments of consciousness because we are surrounded by a cultural context that does not reinforce who we are. So many of us then are driven by what we think is the new knowledge paradigm. There's a constant drive for new knowledge. And what I'm saying here is that sometimes it's more important to live and lay the foundations of what may seem to be more basic, but nonetheless profound. So in other words, let me give an example. So many of us, we claim that we have this supreme African knowledge. We understand our history. We understand our ancestry. But then we look at people who don't have the knowledge that we have, and they're able to build. They are able to build and construct institutions. So is it true if you say that you're more knowledgeable, yet they have created what you have not created? You got to check that. Am I truly knowledgeable if what I know I cannot manifest? So I ask this question: is there one modern, well-managed, African-centered school, college, or university? Not in the UK, not in America, not in Brazil, not in Africa, in the whole world. And having people with so-called black skin does not make it African-centered. Howard University is not African-centered. Spelman University is not African-centered. Morehouse University is not African-centered. So we must invest our knowledge into well-managed, community-funded, look at the word, ugly word, you know, funded institutions. Funded. By whom? By whom? Because you know, it comes to Black History Month, people ask me in advance, they say, oh brother, can you give a lecture? Okay, possibly. Oh well, we've got to get funding. We've got to get funding. So you go to external parties to get funding rather than manifesting it for yourself so you can direct the program. And also by getting your own funding, you're pushing yourself to emerge those latent talents. So part of the problem here is relying on other people. Yeah, we've got academics, we've got doctors, and we write books and we do all of this stuff. But the majority of what we do is not specifically dedicated to our own community. And until we can fund schools, colleges, universities, Saturday schools, and our so-called intellectuals or thinkers, until we fund those people, we're not going to create at the level that we need to create on. And I know that sounds bad to some of us, but unfortunately, it is the truth. I want you to think about it. We are at a crossroads, my people. And it's important to understand that the fact that we are here talking about this subject means we have won to a certain extent. Why do I say that? Because we weren't supposed to survive. We weren't supposed to develop a knowledge of self. We weren't supposed to be doing what we're doing. So in that sense, yes, we have a victory, but it's only a partial victory. I have a question. I know Sister Shanice was talking about Haiti. Some of you may get mad, but I'm gonna ask you the question. Was the Haitian Revolution completely successful? Think about it. Was it completely successful? Now, when you read about the Haitian Revolution, you will see that it had an immense African population. At the time of the revolution, the majority of people were African, meaning that they had come from Africa in a short period of time, right? But the leadership were not African in the sense of being African-centered. I'm going to leave it there because that's not my subject matter. But the point is, if we were African, then wouldn't we return back our names, our language, and our culture? Wouldn't we manifest what we were before we came to these so-called islands? We have to understand that there has been partial revolutions, both physically, psychologically, and spiritually, and even physically. So what I'm saying here is that we are at crossroads, and what we do today will impact on our future generations. We have the opportunity to change the world for the better, or we can continue what we have been doing. And when I talk about this, I want you to understand, I don't worship personalities. I'm talking about structures. The Nation of Islam under the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and the UNIA under Marcus Messiah Garvey were two of the most significant diasporan organizations. You need to understand why. They were talking about nation building, and they were talking about rebuilding our capacity as a people. But that's another lecture. But what I want us to understand, that you are holding the life of your child, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren in your hands right now. And if we believe, I did say believe, if we believe that anybody else, any other people is going to fund our African liberation, then we're out of our minds. It will never happen, people. Never. So, culture. Most of us think culture has something to do with entertainment. We say the theater, dance. That's not what culture is. Culture lays the foundational roots of any social order. And in fact, cultures compete for hegemony. I won't say the word supremacy because I see Sister Shanice ready to pounce. I said hegemony, not supremacy. But until African culture and identity becomes the foundation of all of your knowledge, we will continue to be alienated. Yes, I said it. Not those people out there, but to a certain degree, all of us, as Amos talked about, have been injected with an alien spirit. Amos, in a lecture, talked about the movie Exorcist, and he talked about how the film was based on this demon taking over the body of the woman or whatever it was. But what was he referring to? He was talking about how when somebody or a group of people inject their consciousness into your psyche, you become an alien. What does the demon do to the person? It twists their neck backwards. It makes them do things that are detrimental to their health and their security. That's what it means to be possessed. But I'm taking it out of the Christian concept of possession and I'm putting it into the psychological possession. We are possessed by alien, don't want to say spirits because some people get scared. Alien cultures. We have been programmed. And therefore, to some degree, we all have an aspect of alienation. And that is what we are fighting against. The alien that inhabits us, that tells us that we're not good enough, that tells us that we're going to fight over whether we're African or whether we're Black. We'll be fighting over whether we're Africans, whether we're Moors, whether we're Kemites, whether we're Cushites. We'll be fighting over these concepts for the next 20 years, people. But if you just go to what the Honorable Elijah Muhammad said, he said that a Black man and woman are the original man and woman. End of. I will never debate with somebody about these terms because in the end, while you're debating those terms, your children are asking themselves, what have the elders or those my parents brought into being in order to safeguard my existence? Arguing over whether we're Asiatic, whether we're Africans, whether we're Moors. Yeah. Philosophically, it's interesting. But in practical terms, what does it do for you? What does it do for our young people? What does it say to them that when we claim to be conscious and we're constantly battling each other, instead of reconciling and realizing we don't need to agree fully to build? So we have to recognize that we have been alienated. And that is why this idea of self-knowledge, as Malcolm and the Messenger talked about a knowledge of self, as Garvey talked about self-knowledge, this goes all the way back to our ancient ancestors. Self-knowledge, knowing self. Knowing self is the gateway to self-love. If you don't know who you are, if you don't know your history, if you don't know your culture, if you don't understand your identity, if you don't love your identity, then you will not love yourself. Your hairstyles, your dress, the words that come out of your mouth will reflect an alienated character or characters. You will be possessed by demons called nigger or niggers, because that means something different. I remember the first time I was in Africa and I was talking to this young brother and sister, and the brother said to me, "Oh, you a nigger?" Because you're listening to a subsection of our culture who use those words and project it around the world. Coming from Jamaica and the Caribbean, we never used the word nigger. We would fight over that word. So one of the things that we have to understand is that that what you call hip hop, that consciousness which you called hip hop, was perverted, because in the 90s, that culture which was talking about remember who you are was converted into gangster rap. Now that's another lecture. What am I trying to say? Is that we need to be politically competent. Now, the music that you listen to is political. We need to be culturally competent because we need to build culturally competent families. And I want to ask some of us, very few of our lectures deal with male-female relationships, which is really interesting, given that it takes a man and a woman to create family. So why don't we focus on that? See, we can go into all of these sciences, but if you can't make culturally competent families or politically developed families, you're going to have problems. And we see those problems everywhere where we are.
True.
You say that you're smarter than your great-grandmother, but your great-grandmother or your grandmother may have known how to make family. As limited as their consciousness was, maybe they stayed in their relationship longer than most of us, because we think we're going forward and sometimes we're going backwards, because we have to be humble and understand that those people who maybe came out of enslavement understood the African concept of family. Remember when you were young, you knew all your cousins. We used to congregate together. Nowadays, most young people don't even know their family members. I'm talking about in the UK context, I know it. So how cultural are we? Or are we caught up in the information, but don't know how to make families? So families require men and women to build them, not just, that should be a male, sorry, males and females, not talking about ale. I don't drink ale, I don't drink. You can laugh. Males and females. Now, most people don't understand. A male and female is a biological term. A man and a woman is a cultural term. That's why we had rites of passage. You only become a man and a woman within your cultural context when you achieve certain culturally sanctioned goals. That's why many of us may not be men and women. We are male and female because we have reached the biological stage, but we have not mastered the cultural stage. In Africa, there was a concept behind being a woman or a man, which then was connected to specific behavior patterns. See? So when someone said that's a man or that's a woman, they are expected to fulfill certain behavioral patterns or certain behavioral goals. So knowledge as opposed to information builds families. Builds families. And I will explain why that is important. But I want us to understand, if you study African philosophy and the African cosmology or the African study of order, the core thing was to build families. Now, I want to ask you, amongst those of us who are conscious, how many of us have competent, politically orientated, socially orientated, and African-centered functional families? Uh-oh. I see Sister Shanice is writing down. Don't bring this brother back on again.
You got to
I
talk
see a
the
note
truth.
taking.
We've got to hear the truth. We've got to hear the truth.
So what I'm saying here is, and I've noticed this since I was young, and I used to go to the lectures and people would ask really elaborate questions of the scholars. And in those days, we all used to say, oh, we're scientists. We're scientists. We drop knowledge. We drop bombs on people. We're scientists. We know all of this stuff. Many of us get caught up into esoteric ideas. You know what your mother will say to you? Have you got a house? You got knowledge, but you see, I'm here using the UK context. We might have more knowledge than our parents or grandparents who came here, but guess what? They used the partner or Isusu system to buy houses. They bought houses. They never had the knowledge that you had, or sorry, information, but they were able to establish a foundation that Black people, we were the first ones who really was buying houses when we got here. I'm not talking about the upper middle class. I'm talking about the average European over here. We started buying houses because they knew that you need real estate. Real estate. So here's my point. Esoteric scientists, people that are caught up in ethereal ideas and concepts, do not build well unless they are anchored into the physical reality. That's why they say of Heru that he is of heaven and earth. They said the same as, about Jesus. Wonder why. Jesus was both of heaven and earth. If you are in the heavenly plane and not functioning on the material plane, then you will not build. That is why when we see the monuments of ancient Kemet, you're looking at a people that were balanced, that understood that everything they said about Neter or God had to be manifest on the material plane, because God creates, and so they were creators. When you study ancient African civilizations, you see that they create, they invent, they build. They don't just philosophize, my people. So, esoteric scientists or hardcore revolutionaries may have problems building families. We need a balanced perspective. In other words, your energy configuration, the way that you deal with people, whether you can love, is all related to this concept of family. So if you're so hardcore, you're frightening everybody. You're not a friend. You're not a woman. You're not a man. What are you going to build? We need people. And from the African concept, we have a collective community concept that helped us to build family. So I want us to understand, I'm not critiquing in a mean way, because I'm talking to me, I'm talking to you. But being somebody who can articulate and rhapsodize about all of this information does not lead to building. And that's why people like Garvey or the Messenger or Malcolm, people of that caliber, we need to understand it wasn't just about speaking and being articulate. It was about manifesting. So, what am I saying here? Our alienation is due to the breakdown of the African family and racial oppression. In other words, because we have been fighting to build African families since we got here. That's why they took your names. That's why they took your language. That's why they took your God concept. We use the word God. It's a German word. It's not. What's that got to do with us? Neter, Nebuchadnezzar. When we speak of God, we use European concepts. And when you use the concept, you are assimilating with a worldview that doesn't come from you. So the breakdown of our family structures and racial oppression has created a split persona or split personas in the African mind. And what I'm saying here is that if you study any of our ancient cultures, you will see the African civilization was founded on the backbone of the African family. Now, here's the thing. It has been said that the Happy Valley, not Nile Valley, we're not Greeks. The Happy Valley civilization began with the Twa and the Hutu, those small people. And what they brought to the development of the Happy Valley culture or cultures was the science of the earth, understanding the science of the earth, understanding foods. You know, you've been to New York, you've been to San Francisco, you've seen the pictures of those suspension bridges. I remember Dr. Ben was talking about how the suspension bridges that the Europeans built were copied from the rope bridges that the Twa built in Africa. It's engineering. But we don't look at them like that. We say, oh, Kemet, let's look at the pyramid. But what was the foundation? Before pyramids, what did we have? We had a people who understood the science of the earth and how to recycle and build and create. And if you want to, I'll leave that for now. But the point that I'm making here is that show me a civilization of any worth that was not founded on the creative foundations of the family. Show me where it is. So, without strong families, alienation, individualism, disunity, and singledom increase. What am I saying here? We have a lot of angry so-called African or Black people in our community because they don't have proper contextualized family relationships. You're seeing young men going out on the streets killing other young men because they have a mistaken concept of manhood. Because where are the fathers? Where are the mothers? You say, oh, well, the mothers are there. They say in America, oh, they used to say, mama's baby, papa's maybe. But here's the thing that we need to understand. If the single Black mother is problematic, then so is the father, and we can't even use the word father. So is the male that impregnated her. It's not electro male-female relationships. But needless to say, everybody has to be accountable for who they have children with. Because when you pick somebody to have children with, you are increasing or decreasing your ability to create families. Now, I know I've already alienated people from me from talking the real, but we know this is true. Dr. Ben used to say, when you lay with somebody, remember, as a man, if that woman becomes pregnant, then her ideas, her behavior are going to be the foundation for the upbringing of your children. Remember that the man that you lay with has a genetic energy configuration. He has cultural behaviors. And while you may enjoy the physical act, after that act, if you become pregnant and choose to have that child, then you have to deal with that reality. This is why I said I was going in tonight, not because I'm bringing all the esoteric stuff that everybody loves, because I'm keeping it basic. These are the basic things that we weren't told, or sometimes we were told, but in a way that we didn't understand it. Because in Africa, we made families by manipulating the culture. In the diaspora and in Africa today, our families are being made by aliens. They make the family because the family, number one, that they construct will not be a family that compete with them. Number two, they make broken families because broken families allow you to be predatory. Does everybody understand that? When you have broken families, you will have predatory people who prey on those families. Boy, I tell you, quiet in here, so you know.
We're listening keenly. We're listening keenly.
So, you know, my objective tonight is not to offend. It is just to look at what may be considered some truth. I'm not here to offend anybody. But until we as African people can speak to each other in real terms, we're not going anywhere. Because our children are listening, but they're watching. They're watching us talk about all this African stuff and great African civilizations, all of which is true. But then they're saying, okay, well, what did you build? Because if we don't build African businesses, then who will employ our children? Oh, go to university and get a job. But once you go to university, you got to go to people who do not want you to compete with them for a job. And then you say racism, racism, all of which is true. But here's the point, my people. If we are dependent on other populations for our resources, then those other populations will, by definition, control our behavior. They will determine the kind of hairstyles we have. They will determine the way we think or the way that we speak to a certain degree. There's no such thing as absolutes. So dependency will lead to an impoverished cultural context, an impoverished family. You know, one of the reasons why there's a connection between capitalism and divorce. Capitalism likes divorces because when people divorce, you got to buy double. You hear me? Simple thing. When families are broken up, instead of you having a family with these things and you're buying for a family, now you have individuals buying for themselves. Even the whole concept of creating a teenager, the teenager was a financial creation. They created teenagers so they could make more money. Hear me well. You got to understand that capitalism is by nature replicating itself in order to feed on those people. So again, without a political consciousness, we are in trouble. Let's go back to the great Professor Amos Wilson. And if you haven't got this book, Self-Hatred and Self-Defeat, oh, you better buy it. And he did a 10 series lecture, a series of lectures. I think there were 10 lectures on self-hatred. If you think what I'm saying is rough, nobody listen to that. Nobody. because he takes no prisoners. Doesn't mean he's rude, but he tells it like it is. And this is why many conscious people run from psychology. You see, in Europe, they take disciplines and they separate them out. We didn't think like that as a people. But you see, psychology is about how you manipulate the mind to create particular types of people. You all know about Pavlovian dog. You know the experiments on mice and are about controlling the environment. And if you change the environment, you change the type of mouse it is. I was going to say something about birds and pigeons, but I won't. But you know, I was thinking the other day when we were little, pigeon stuff was little, but now pigeon stuff it's like a whole meal because the pigeons eat the food that we're eating. Well, that some people eat. I don't eat that food. So now even the nature of the animals changes because of the urbanization and the urban context. Understand, people, that power is about manipulation. You can manipulate for the good and you can manipulate for the bad. So I want us to see then, this is Amos, how self-hatred or alienation is induced in us through the power and ability of the dominant culture to manipulate us. You see, that's why you hear black people, right? It's always cringeworthy, but you will hear black people say, black people were the most racist to me in my whole life. Not white people. It was black people. They've done more harm to me. But the question is, that may be true in your perception, but the question is, where did the consciousness come from that creates the context for the social harm? See, many of you, and we see this, we see the mass killings of black people, and there's a certain set of our population that always talk forgiveness. Now, remember that forgiveness can be a healing to you, but to get out on TV and say, I forgive the person who just killed my child is off. It is off. But many of us talk this is our philosophy. We think that's spiritual. You can forgive, but you don't need to keep declaring, because what you're telling those other people is that you will continue to be a victim. But make somebody who look like you do you something. You don't talk forgiveness. You say, where them there? We pick up the gun, the knife, the machete for people that look like us. And that didn't come from nowhere. Nature abhors a vacuum. So the question is, who are you? Truthfully, we are inculcated into alien traditions, which we will fight to maintain. Have you ever tried to talk to somebody who every word you say, they will try to fight to maintain their oppression? You're talking about African, they're talking about I'm British, I'm American, whatever. I'm Charlie, I'm Paula White. Know what I mean? They will fight you on every word you say. They defend that which stripped them of their nature. The reason why they don't know their name, the reason why they don't know their language, the reason why they don't have strong families and businesses in their community, they will forego all of that to begin having a what we call a black pathological session, where what you do, everything that is wrong becomes the fault of people that look like you. And the solution then is for you not to look like you, or to remold your DNA. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that. And you see, what we do is we undermine our messengers, our teachers. Sometimes our teachers are the most hated people. And I've seen it personally. One time I've seen African American scholars come here, knowledgeable people, and be mistreated and spoken to incorrectly by people who didn't know anything. You know, it's dangerous sometimes to have knowledge of self around your own people. Because you could be saying, well, you know, we need to do this. I remember, this is a funny one. I remember when I was learning to drive, I had a black driving instructor. This is hilarious. Jamaican, you know, article Jamaican. And I said to him, I chose you to be my driving instructor to support black businesses. The man looked upon me. He said, that's racist. I'm not lying, yeah. I'm not making a joke. About a year later, he lost his house and he had to give up his business.
Oh no.
See, I just made a joke, but you see the lack of consciousness. No other group of people think like we do. Everything racist. You see other groups, they open a shop, they don't look for you. The only time they look for you is when you live in a neighborhood that demographically looks like you, they put you at the front. But you know you ain't running a shop. So what I'm saying here, we undermine our messengers so we can maintain our illusions. Remember that film, Menelik Shabazz, Burning an Illusion? Sometime thing have to burn. And when I say that, what I mean by that is that oftentimes when people hear the truth, they turn against the truth teller rather than the person or the thing that inflicted the wound. So we often rationalize to protect the cultural and religious hegemony that enslaves us. You know, black people, one time, I remember in Harlesden, yeah, there was a black business and an Asian business selling groceries, yeah? And I remember talking to people and they're like, I'm not going into the black one because it's more expensive. Lack of critical thinking. The Asians have got a whole network where they can buy the food for cheaper so they can sell it for cheaper. So the black business went out of business because we wouldn't go and shop in there because we don't know critical thinking. A business is a beachhead for power. And when you don't support black businesses, you are demonstrating that you don't value black people. That's why our knowledge is always free, because it's not valued. In capitalism, anything that is free is considered not to have real value, or it is utilized in a way to bring people to something that we're going to demonstrate has value. So, is your cultural reference point in Europe? I remember in America going to people's houses, they used to have JFK on the wall and white Jesus. Some of you vex already. You can't talk about Jesus. Listen, even if you say Jesus existed, if that's what you want to say, and I know there's many black versions to it, but here's the thing. In the Bible, it says Jesus had hair like lamb's wool, and his skin, they said, was like burnt brass. So which part of that Jesus is the Jesus that you see around the global African community? Go to some places in Africa and say Jesus is black, yeah? When they fling you out the country, we'll be at the airport waiting for you. I'm laughing because it is painful. It's not painful to me, in truth. I'm not going to lie. It's not painful, but it's something that we've got to deal with. It's something that we have to deal with. And this is not in the UK. It's in Brazil. Brazil has got one of the largest African populations, but the Africans in Brazil are not in power. Why? Because in Brazil, they developed a program called whitening, which was designed for people to escape from their Africanness. I know none of us will admit to ever having thoughts of wanting to escape. If only my skin wasn't as dark, or my nose wasn't as big, or my lips weren't as juicy. then I'd be better off. But who's going to admit to that? Who is going to admit to that? We don't have to admit to that because the surgeries that we have and the chemical means of changing who we are is evidence enough. Caribbean, Africa, UK, see it there? Do we love self? So in order to produce self-hatred in the black man, the white man had to degrade all things African. See, that's Amos. Remember this, wash me and I should be whiter than snow. Wash me, man. Wash me. And we used to sing them hymns, boy. Sing those hymns. Wash me whiter than snow, oh Lord. Remember, of course, the color white is not necessarily synonymous with Europeans. There's a deeper spiritual meaning behind that, but we're dealing with the Negro phobias here. We're not dealing with the esoteric right here. We're dealing with the Negro phobias of singing hymns. Wash me whiter than snow, oh Lord. And those of us who've been to Cape Coast and Elmina, we know that the churches were above the dungeons. And the lord of the castle, I forget what them call him, governor, whatever, residence was above the female dungeons to take our women and mistreat them. But of course, many of us today say that we have had more severe treatment from each other than the people that enslaved us. It's interesting. It's interesting where we choose to see or what we choose to see. This means that for us to be in this position, self-hatred must have been and is inserted into the depths of our psyche. It was inserted and it is continually inserted. That's why we have problems with people that look like us. We look in the mirror and we see something that we don't like. And we look at each other in this damaged state and say, you know what? If only I could change these features. If only I can get something to make me less dark. Boy, what a thing my talk now. Question. What makes you African? So all the people who say you're black, you're Moorish, and you're Asiatic, okay, well, whoever, you might not say African, but those of you who say you're African, what makes you African? Is it your language? Mm-mm. Is it your culture? Mm-mm. Is it your spirituality? Mm-mm. Meaning, if we go around the world using that criteria, how many of us are really African? But then you say, well, the Yoruba tradition was transposed into the Catholic tradition, which is true. The saints became the Yoruba Orisha. But the question is, if you're still using the saints instead of going back to the Orisha, then isn't there a problem? If I come to Sister Shanice's house and I take something from her house, doesn't she want to get it back from me? Isn't her objective to return the stolen items? Well, you were stolen. Your culture was stolen. Your language was stolen. Your identity is stolen. But it seems as if many of us are not really desiring to return to our original state. But you say, of course, we can't do that. We can't go back in the past. That's what you say. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. Part of this is because of the damage that has been done. I don't want to go back to Africa. In the Caribbean, during the revolutions, the objective in the first place was to get back to Africa. You know that? Our objectives, people fought on ships and tried to sail the ship back to Africa. So what happened? People forgot who they were. They forgot their language. They forgot their names. They forgot their culture. And now they say, well, I'm not really African. I'm Bayesian or I'm Jamaican. As much as you see Africanisms in the islands, Where is the official African cultural context? Can you go to the Caribbean and say you're African? How many people will accept that? And it's not merely the acceptance, it is the cultural context that should reflect that. So, what daily practices reinforces your ethnic identity? What do you do on a day-to-day basis to reinforce who you are? Now, put that within the context in what do you do that reinforces your European consciousness on a daily basis? What do you do? Which one outweighs the other? Boy, what a thing. So, in the system of racial oppression, according to Amos Wilson, Africans have been successfully penalized for the following things. You got to understand, in Eb Dubois' book, The Soul of Black Folks, he talks about the creation of the American police force and the American prison system. They were created at the end of our enslavement, and they brought out loitering rules. If there was 3 of us or 4 of us standing around, they would arrest us and put us back on the chain gang. There was a book by a guy called Thomas Blackman, a Caucasian journalist, who proved that slavery never really completely ended until the 1940s. Yeah. See, all those chain gangs and all the laws were designed to put you back on the plantation as a prisoner. So we are punished as Africans for doing the following, for assembling. So if we group together and try to do something together, we are generally punished, even from within our own ranks, because people will say you're being racist. They will say you have to include everybody. We are we are punished for assembling together. We are punished for loving and supporting each other. You know, sometimes some of that homespun wisdom, don't treat the man too good, you know. No butter. Woo! You understand? Don't, we have all these don'ts that we get told. Nobody love the woman, sir. Why? Why shouldn't we love the woman? The African woman who was with us on the plantations, who nursed our wounds, who protected us. Why should we not? I'm not talking about any woman, but a special one or a special man. We are encouraged not to love one another. We are punished for cohesive and collective action. So in other words, whenever we build an organization, look, whenever Black people build organizations, see, people say to us, we got it twisted. They say, we don't want you around. And you believe them. They tell you, get away, get away. But as soon as we go to build something, them come for destroy it. That's the history. That when we act cohesive and collectively, even if we're not being racialized, what I mean is, look, you can come together and work together without being anti anybody else. So why is that a problem when we see other groups of people doing this naturally and automatically? The Chinese go to Africa, they do it as Chinese. They make restaurants and tell you, you can't come in. We've seen the videos of Chinese people beating down the Black population. And then you see Black people fighting against each other. They draw the machete. We come hard. But you'll stand around and let someone else who has a different skin color abuse you. Because you've been programmed to be what? Controlled by aliens and alien cultures. So in other words, we are rewarded for engaging in negative behavior. In other words, if I get on this show tonight and start running down Sister Shanice and saying negative things, her numbers will increase. Numbers will increase exponentially because now everybody wants to see the drama. What did he say to her? What was it? What was it? Da, 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 da. We'll come out for that. We'll come out for the circus. But if me say, yes, ma'am, I like her. She's a good sister. That's not exciting. What we need to do is get into some kind of ruckus. So negative behavior is rewarded. Sometimes the reward for the negative behavior is the feeling that we get inside when we do something to somebody black. I remember I was a heavy nightclub. I ain't gonna lie, yeah. Heavy blues goer when I was young. And I used to go, sometimes I'd go to a club and there'd be a brother on the door, or sometimes it'd be a blues and I'd just say, give me a squeeze now. Meaning, drop the price for me, man. We're both black, innit? We're black. We feel cheated when we pay each other. You don't like it. You don't want to play another black person, but you'll be happy to pay somebody else. This is all the negative conditioning. So the reward is the internal feeling. I feel cheated by this black person because I paid them the full price. So these internal feelings are accompanied by external sanctions. So in other words, we are taught in these cultures that if we berate, belittle, and destroy each other, then it's all right. So in other words, we can have hip hop talking about itches and iggers and all this kind of stuff. That's okay. But if you talk about another community, you get sanctioned. You got to understand the psychology. We have failed to properly study or comprehend the Martha. Most of us are still in the Martha context as a global community. We have not escaped enslavement because we are still mentally enslaved. But we are willing that with this work, we can begin to change our reality. Now, Eb Dubois, I've written about this. When I was doing my PhD, I had to go through the papers of Eb Dubois. I found a letter sent by Du Bois to his cousin who was asking him, should he buy shares in the Black Star Line? Du Bois told him, nobody buy it. See? Du Bois is one of our top scholars. You see, you all better know the guy on the left is J. Edgar Hoover. I'm not even going to go into the history. I got a whole lecture on COINTELPRO, J. Edgar Hoover, but are we even ready to deal with that stuff? Here, what I want to talk about is we have a split persona, a damaged psyche, which has been programmed to work against our own interests. W.B. Du Bois, A. Philip Randolph, who's next to him in that picture, and other Negroes went to the Attorney General in the United States and said that Garvey must go. Black people created a Garvey must go campaign. And some of you, oh, Marcus Garvey failed. He wasn't bright enough. J. Edgar Hoover created what was called the JID, the General Intelligence Department. He created that department, and the first victim was the Honorable Marcus Messiah Garvey. He knew that he wasn't doing anything illegal, so he had to create illegalities in order to take him down. But Du Bois and Randolph and other Negroes, and I say Negro carefully because Du Bois wasn't a Negro in all things, but they brought Marcus Garvey down. That is why when we are in this consciousness movement, not only must we factor in external opposition, we must factor in first internal opposition, that the very people that you come to bring knowledge, wisdom, and understanding may see you as the problem. Dr. King was stabbed by an African-American woman. Malcolm was killed by 5 African Americans. The list, Garvey was shot in his office by a black man. The list goes on and on. Du Bois suffered from a form of alienation and jealousy. He had color problems. He made fun of Marcus Garvey, I'm saying black. You know, if you're from the Caribbean, you know that you could be sanctioned for being too dark or too light. Either way you get it. And he said, well, why do my people treat me this way? Why are black people making fun of my color? The question is, where did they get it from? Now you're blaming them, but you're not seeing the original act and the original poisoning that went into the mind that is running through the generations of our family. So that's why you say black people have treated me the worst. They have been the most racist because you don't know the root cause. So we have the duality of being. In 1903, Eb Dubois wrote this powerful book called The Souls of Black Folks. Great book. He spoke of this double consciousness, two warring ideals in one black body. So he identified that within the African American or the African. Remember, for many years or centuries, black people in America were using the word African. But that's another story. So there is a duality within us, according to W.E.B. Du Bois. But the duality of being was identified by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad spoke of this duality as exemplified in God and the devil, and that the devil was the negative part of the original man. So Du Bois said there's a duality, and the messenger said it. He said that the devil first existed in the black man and was pulled out of him. Now, some of you I know, oh, that's a mythology. Look, metaphoring. The concept is what you need to understand. Whether you believe in it happened or not, there's a concept going on here. The duality of being. That within you, there is a higher and lower nature. And that your environment will draw out particular types of behavior, that your friendship groups will draw out particular types of behavior. Show me your friend, I'll show you your level of consciousness.
We are 15 minutes away from the top of the hour. So I'd like to ask our brothers and sisters in the chat if they've got any questions that they would like to put to you. We'll try and leave, at least 10 minutes or so for a bit of Q&A. Yeah?
No yes, my sister.
Oh, fantastic.
Yes, my sister.
Yeah, you've just got us all so drawn in. I'm looking at the comments as you're going on, and people are just so into this presentation that you're doing. It's a reality check. It's a soul searching check that we all need to be doing.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
But let me allow to continue for a few minutes more so that
no problem.
Yeah.
You gotta bring it, mom. You bring it. You bring it.
You're bringing it. You're bringing it.
And this is why I thought carefully about doing this lecture, because I said, you know what, they ain't gonna like me. But I'm not an entertainer. I'm here for the freedom and justice and equality of my people. That's why I'm here. I don't take this as entertainment. And I know that when you get up and you speak this way, you're putting your neck out. So I didn't come here to run jokes. I'm joking. But the thing about it, as Sister Shanice said, this is a wake-up call to me first. So I speak to me, and then I speak to you. None of us are exempt, in my view. So over to Shaka and return to the African mother principle of male and female equality, spoke of the warring souls that exist in the spirit and the psyche of the colonized African. But here's the thing. Is it the colonized African? Or were there warring souls before colonization? You see, what you have to understand is this duality of being existed, and Africans codified it. Let's have a look. And I hope if Dr. Winters is on here, I hope he's going to hear me out. Hear me out, because this is still a subject matter that we need to go into. So in the Happy Valley context, I have read and was told that in the original context, Set and Heru did not represent good and evil. That actually Set represented night and Heru represented day. It wasn't evil in the first context. But again, that's another lecture. So it was said that in ancient times, the duality of Heru and Set corresponded to notions of night and day, not good and evil. But at some point, Heru became associated with good and Set with evil. The question is why? That is a question that we need to look at. And I'll be speaking to Dr. Winters about this subject. Never close the door on a subject thinking that you know it. Be humble and be prepared to learn and dig deeper into the soil of African culture and African consciousness. So Set became identified as Satan, Satan, and Shaitan in Arabic, the fire lord. So this duality of being moved from night and day to good and evil. So the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and Du Bois were talking about a concept that goes back into our history. Many of us think, oh, I just got a new idea. There are no new ideas. There's nothing new under the sun. You may modify the idea and bring it forward, but it's not new. All right, I'm coming to the end, Sister Shanice. No worry. So what we're talking about here is the lower and higher consciousness. Now, don't get it twisted, people. We're talking metaphors. I realized one day, I never liked Judas, because I never liked Judas when I was little. But I realized one day that Jesus and Judas only really made sense to me when I identified them as two diametrical thinking systems, or two people existing in one person. Judas represents the negative principle that betrays the God within you. In other words, Jesus is the God, the Savior anointed, the one who saves you. But within you is Judas. Judas is the one who portrays the God, just like in the Assyrian drama, where Set betrays Osir. You see? So in the Christian context, Jesus and Judas, for me, represent one person with a split persona, or two spirits existing in one body. I'll leave it there. But the key, though, is the unification of your consciousness. The lower part of self must be united to the higher part of self. And then you become conscious. You awaken to who you truly are. So what we refer to as Neteru or Risha, etc., are faculties that exist within you. God exists within you. You can't say in the African context, so does the devil, because in Africa, we never had the concept of a devil. But that's another story. A leg bar is not a devil. Okay? So let's move forward. What's the point? You see this picture, Heru and Set? We are at war with self. You're at war within yourself. You are at war with the Negro and the black man, or the Negro and the black woman, or the Negro and the African woman. You are at war with these identities, the good and the bad aspects of your character. You must bring them together and unify into a singular existence. So this predates colonization and enslavement. So, black on black violence. What does Amos Wilson say? Violence against self. Deliberate and unnecessary violence against self is a sign of, this is what I wrote, deliberate and unnecessary violence against each other is a sign of impotence and a mind riddled with self-hatred, which helps maintain our oppression. In other words, when we kill the nigger, we kill that part of ourselves. When we attack each other, we're doing the work for the master. And the master is the consciousness in your mind that identifies your so-called blackness as an enemy that needs to be destroyed. And that is why often you will see our people attacking each other. So what is the problem as we begin to bring this to a close? We lack a unified form of consciousness. We lack a unified system of male-female relations. Why? Because many of us, male and female, the biological aspect, are at war with each other. On social media and other places, we pull each other down. We call each other ridiculous names. We talk about the black man is no good. We talk about the black woman is no good and why other people are better. I mean, you are historically mistaken. The reason why the black man is the way he is partly is because of enslavement, colonization, and racial oppression. Same goes for the sister. What you say about you as a sister, what you say about a brother, if he is your reflection, watch out. What we say about each other is indicative of creating a particular psyche and a behavior problem. Pattern, sorry. We lack a unified family structure. We lack a unified culture. So what is the key then? The key is the unification of self, and family is therefore the key. That is why in the Assyrian concept, you have Osir, Heru, and Orset, not Isis, Horus, and Osiris. We're not Greeks. But at the root of that system is the family and the creation of the family. How do you make the family sacred and divine? You don't know that many of us, we say, I love God, but then you don't love the people around you. You mistreat the people around you because you don't see God in them. But if you knew your ancestral and spiritual system, you would know that the African man and the African woman has the potential to be a God on this plane of existence. And therefore, when you attack each other, you are demonstrating that you love God not. Because God is in all things that exist on the physical plane. That is what we need to understand. You do not love God when you attack each other in an unnecessary and calculated manner. And so I say to us, we must humbly reevaluate our behaviors. That's all of us. Stop focusing on particular groups of people. Well, you should know. Sister Shanice should know. He should know. Do you know that our behavior is determined by the people around us, and the people around us reflect an impact on what we do unless we have the consciousness that overrides that, meaning that we are all susceptible to our environment. If you want to have better relationships, clean up your environment. Start with your diet, your health, your breathing. And that, my dear and wonderful people, will have an impact on your thinking and your behavior. And one day, your children won't talk about Black love. It will be automatic. Because when he sees that sister and she sees him, he'll say, And nobody knows what that means. Because if you've never heard a Black woman go, then you just don't know. Yes, my sister. How that may I deal with? Me can't hear you.
I've been busily making lots of notes in the background there. Wow. I feel as though you just stripped us naked today. You went into our soul, you went into our spirit, and just expose the realization of the extent to which we have really been deprived of so much of who we are as a people. And, you know, we've got our work to do to rebuild us again. And it was just a presentation that was just, you know, one that we needed to have, a very sobering presentation. And, you know, we learned so much from it. People in the chat did have some questions. I don't know how much time you've got, but let's put some of the questions to you that were coming up in the chat. So where shall I start from? This one says, what is the solution you see to resolve our situation? And I think you was touching on some of the solutions there to in the last slide, but I wonder if you could maybe just hone in and be a bit more specific. And there was another similar question that you could probably attach it to. It says, yeah, and how can we develop a common cause psychosis amongst African people? So rise up the Jamaican Jankro for that question there. And Jamili, thank you for that question. So,
okay, so I didn't quite understand the second question, but I'll start.
Okay, the second one. Oh yeah, go ahead. You start with the first one. And
I'll start with the first question. So the first question was, how do we do it? Was that it?
Solutions, yeah.
Okay, solutions. Okay, so the first thing we have to remember is lectures don't create solutions. They create openings in the mind for us to begin to think about the issues. We need think tanks, people. We need think tanks. We need to bring our brightest minds together to sit down and study particular areas and make implementations. We need to realize, you know, some of us say, oh, that's all talk. No. No. It is we say that the utterance of the Supreme Being brought us into existence. So speaking is a powerful tool, but it's not the only tool. We speak so we can bring into existence. How do we do this? We need to concentrate, in my view, on the basics. You know, I have lectures on male-female relations, and a lot of people don't come because they say, oh, well, maybe I'm not in a relationship. Maybe I've not been successful. I'm too traumatized. But they're failing to understand the lecture ain't for you necessarily. What about your children? What have you taught your children about male-female relationships? You see, male-female relationships are designed to do what? To ensure the continuing generations. So if you don't study it and understand it and unpack that, then how are we going to move forward? You could, Sister Shanice could have a child and teach that child this knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. But if nobody else has that knowledge, wisdom, and understanding, who are they going to marry? They're just, many of our children give up on consciousness because they feel like they're alone. Nobody else thinks like me. And so they give it up. So
and
we
you touched on that. You touched on that earlier in your presentation, you know, about people dipping in and out of consciousness as well, and the difference between having knowledge and applying that knowledge, because, you know, or having information and knowledge. So if you have the information, but you don't act on it, then, you know, you're just not applying that knowledge. But going back to the question from the Jamaican Jankro, you touched on it as well just now by when you were saying, if, you know, if one child has the knowledge and another doesn't, you know, they're just not going to find that companion. And so this is what the Jamaican Jankro was asking. He said, how can we develop a common kind of cohesive, you know, psychosis amongst us as African people? How, you know, how can we get on the same plane, the same mindset, so that we're moving forward as one, as a people? Because we are divided. I mean, you talked about we're divided by religion and, you know, language and nationality. Some of us call ourselves, you know, the Israelites, the Moors, the this and that. We're so divided as a people, fighting each other as we have done for centuries, destroying each other over ideologies. I mean, how can we get beyond that?
So Sheikh Anta Diop wrote a book called The Cultural Unity of Black Africa. So what we need to understand is that not all African cultures were the same, but they have themes that run through them: collective, communal. What we have to understand is the reason why we had rites of passage within the African context was to build a man and a woman to fit together. That's why in Kemet, they say that the god Kahum made man and woman at the same time on his potter's wheel. Now, while they were two bodies, the ultimate goal was for them to become one. But you can only become one when you have a cultural context and environmental stimuli that create that oneness. In other words, we need to understand our own culture and to teach variants of that culture with the same themes running through them in order to get that communal sense. In other words, remember that what made us in this country, for example, what made us strong when we first got here, because we had cousins and they were brought up in a similar way to us. And so therefore we interconnected. We interconnected because we had the same family values. Now our values are all over the place. We have assimilated into the mainstream values and forgotten who we were. So the key to that question in a very short way is to say that we have to rebuild our culture. And what we have to understand about culture is this: culture is based on tradition and reason. It's not just tradition. If that tradition doesn't work, we don't do it now. But if the tradition works in terms of reason, meaning that if what we need can be based on our traditions, then we do it. So we have to rebuild our culture, not just have discussions about information. You see, because what we really, if we had proper institutions, we would be bringing our children to these institutions and they would be meeting their future mates. But we're not, we don't like that because, oh, I need to be an individual. But if you look at some of the most successful cultures, what do? They determine the process of marriage and relationships. Some of the most, the people that have the most resources know that in order to keep your resources, you must do what? You must bring together people with the same cultural values to cement into a cultural context. That is what we're missing, because for us, it's anybody, because, love blind, Yeah. Say that.
That's why to take back control of our education, because, as you were saying in your presentation, our consciousness, our thinking, our mind is what impacts our behavior. And so that's why it's so important for us to talk, because by talking, we are shaping the minds of our people. We have to have our own narrative that is promoting, our higher level of consciousness among us as a people. And so if we're not having these conversations, if we're not shaping our minds, then how do we expect the behavior of our people to actually change? And it's so important, that is, to me. And I love what you said there about how, again, this is an example of why speaking is so important, because we speak things into existence. When we talk, we speak things into existence. So should we have the right mindset so that what we talk into existence is going to be what we want to see happen? Oh, wow. There's so much that could be said, but because of time, let me go back to the chat and bring in some of the comments from our family members. Okay, a bit of a conversation going on about, sadly, some of the divisiveness that exists in America right now, different ideologies fighting amongst each other, really. I'm not even going to go into that and give it any airspace here. Let me scroll up. Rise up, Lonnie. Lonnie says, excellent presentation. Sometimes there is no sugar that can sweeten the bitterness of the truth. Self-evaluation. I love that. Yeah. That's brilliant there. Tuka Pamoja, good to have you in the house, says, this is a great lecture by Dr. Kheftusa and brought by Sister Shanice. Thank you so much, Tuka Pamoja, for that comment as well. Absolutely agree. Great lecture. First Time says, we are the most spiritual people on the planet. Just saying. You're absolutely right. We all agree with you on that. The spiritual aspects is the oneness in the Most High Creator of creation. African Power says, with pride and dignity, everything will be great. And didn't our parents have a lot of that?
That's right.
They had pride, they had dignity, they had culture. That's why we were all having rice and peas on a Sunday, soup on a Saturday, fish on Friday. We had culture. Because so what? Yeah, rice and peas on Sunday as well. You know what? We find out when we start to visit everybody house, everybody have rice and peas on Sunday. They brought that culture, they brought the pride, they brought dignity, you know, and they brought that spirit of oneness. But sadly, you know, we were left in the hands of the education system, and they left us there because they thought, you know, they know best. The teachers know best, didn't they? And what did they do? They totally corrupted our mind. And I love the way, you know, you give me something else again to take away today. We have been alienated. I'll never use that word again in the same way. We have been alienated. You know, we have been injected with a demonic spirit. I know you didn't want to say, you know, we have, you know, we have been turned upside down, inside out, wrong way round. And that's what the miseducation system has done to us. They've imposed an alien mindset into us as a people, and we're walking around in a dysfunctional way. Most of us don't even realize it.
I wanted to say something very quickly.
Go ahead, and
because
let me say this before I forget. I need to remind you to mention.
I'm going to mention it.
Okay.
I'm going to mention. So somebody talked about bitter. Now, those of us from the Caribbean, remember, we used to have Sirisi.
Yes.
So we, at particular times in the years, we were given bitters for our health, meaning that a healthy expression of who you are requires that you take the bitters along with the sweet. In fact, we don't even know what sweet is if we don't know the bitter. So the point here is that what we have done today, what we've looked at today, are the things that we need to work on. If you want to be a top athlete, you don't work at what you're good at, you work at what you're not good at. So as much as I've said all this, it's not bleak, because now we have the ability to have this conversation. And what we have to learn to do is stop fighting one another. Stop fighting over ideologies. Stop bringing each other down. Learn how to resolve our conflicts. Conflict resolution in the African community needs to be rebuilt, because in the old days, the elders, and an elder is not someone older than you. An elder is someone who has mastered the science of life, who has the knowledge, wisdom, and understanding to resolve issues. So what we need to understand now is that culture, our culture, will help us resolve issues. But until we know what our culture is, we're always going to be at the wrong place and at the wrong time. And that's the key to understand. We need the bitters for the healing. We need to heal.
Ashe, Ashe. Thank you so much for that. Yes, and the bitter's good for us whether we like it or not. Okay, let me go over to the chapters. Maybe probably just the last time because of time. Anna says, yes, you definitely opened our minds. And Farouz asking, yes, brother, that's what W/S does when they have an agenda. Okay, let me leave that one because I haven't got time to work out that one. Mundeli says, what's the distinction that the brother draws? What is the distinction that the brother draws between Psy-che and African spirit. Rise up, Sister Afrijamo, as well, rising us up for
Beautiful. I
a
love that
fantastic
question. Give me
presentation.
that question. Give me that
So
question.
let me give you that again.
That's
That one is, what is the distinction that you draw between psyche and African spirit?
Now, you see, brother or sister, that's a PhD in African cosmology. But here's what I'll
Wow.
say in a simple way of looking at it. In truth, psyche and spirit are interconnected when properly understood. Remember, when I was young, I used to say to myself, I am going to focus till I see the point where light turns to dark. I'm looking for the moment where darkness falls, but it doesn't fall like that because it's been doing that the whole day. What do I mean by that? Meaning that the psyche and the spirit are closely connected. To make an absolute distinction would be incorrect. But what we would understand is that if there is the concept of mind, body, and spirit, that order shows you that you must understand the physical body, the mental body, and that will unlock the spiritual body. So all of these things are interconnected. There's a triunity between the three. We only separate them in terms of conversation, but also understand that our psyches and our understanding of our psyches must be taken back to an African reality. Much of what we're doing now are the foundation stones, and those that come after us will put these things together in a coherent way that we can apply. But in my view, you shouldn't make a broad or bold distinction between the two. Yes, there are differences, but at some point they join. Hear what I'm saying. There are differences between men and women, but at some point they join and create. So the differences become one. That's how you create. Think about it in all of the permutations. So when we look at things holistically, separation exists, but only to a certain degree. Me and Sister Shanice are apparently separate, and yet we both come from the same energy source that created the universe. So in truth, we are one. It is for us to find the oneness and to live that oneness in accordance to our level of understanding and our consciousness. And that is why when people say you're woke, they're referring to the awakening of the God man and the God woman that comes through understanding the physical, understanding the mental, and understanding the spiritual, and bringing these together into a unified form that helps you manifest that oneness.
Wow, beautifully put, beautifully put. I want to thank everybody for all of the questions that you've been asking in the chat. My apologies that, we can't bring more of the questions into the discussion. We'd be here till midnight if we were to do that. So thank you so much. And I think the one that I'm going to end on, and lots of big ups, by the way, Dr. Kheftusa, lots of mentions about it being an excellent presentation. But the one I want to end on, I can't find it here, but it was along the lines of, with pride, we can become great again. We can accomplish all things again. Where is it? Pride and something else. I tell you what, let me go over to you to just remind everybody about the event that's happening on Saturday. I did post about the event earlier, so the link to your website and the events page is in the chat.
Beautiful. Look at that. We work together seamlessly.
So let me allow you to just remind everybody of Saturday's event, because it would be wonderful to have the family in the house. And the beautiful thing about your event on Saturday is that it is a Zoom event. And so we'll be able to see some of our family members who are just normally faceless in the audience. It'd be wonderful, wonderful to meet the Jamaican Junker, Tukapa Moja, see Sister Afrijamo, Brother Iko, the regulars who we have in the house. ever strong. It'd be wonderful, wonderful to see you in the flesh by the screen on Saturday. So over to you, my brother. Please remind us.
Okay, so as my beloved sister just said, on the 3rd of September, we have a free event. Now, remember, I've been talking about value. So this event is for you.
Mhm.
It is for you to show your support, because Saankh Productions intends to do some good work. That is why the event is called A New Beginning. I'm working on a book. It's almost finished. I've written books before, but they're not African-centered. They're within the context of my career, but I'm not there. I'm writing for us, definitively. So writing books and programs is what we want to do. So the first in this new beginning is bringing on this indomitable African woman who shows her love like the great mother in bringing us together and nurturing us all. That is the importance of women. So I wanted to bring Sister Shanice on. And again, the date is the 3rd of September. I believe the time is 7 o'clock. Check the chat. I wanted to bring this sister on because people say, oh, give them their flowers now. We're not giving her flowers. We're giving her the opportunity to shine. Let her shine her light. Because you see, a person can be a great speaker and another person can be known by their works. This sister is working and she's taking time away from family to do this piece of work. We must demonstrate our thanks for this, because yeah, oh, I see. We must demonstrate our thanks for this, because do not take people for granted. Do not take this sister for granted. If you don't support her, if I don't support her, this could end. But we have no intention of ending this. We intend to build institutions, and we intend to start building them now. And that is why I'm going to work with Sister Shanice. And in addition to that, as you see, we have the great Dr. Clyde Winters. And you see this is winter. With him it's the summer, because he brings the light. He brings the light, and he is a person that has written so many books. And on the 17th of September, approximately 2 weeks later, he will be given a lecture on the Kushite origins of ancient Kemet. And I picked him because he brings it. He doesn't say what you think he's going to say. He doesn't say what you want him to say. He brings it. And those are the type of scholars that we need, and the type of scholars that I'm looking for, because whenever I read his books, I have to rethink some of the things that I thought I knew. So 3rd of September, people, come on. I want you to come out. I want you to show the support. I want you to demonstrate that we can unify. We can work together, that we don't only come out when there's controversy, that we come out when the love is shining from one consciousness to the next. So that is the 3rd of September with our one and only Sister Shanice, who smiles and we see the light.
And I've just posted the link again to your events page on your website. So family, you have the link there. Please click on it now. And please register now. Note that you will need to register for this event. So please do register right now.
And not all on Saturday either, because that's too much. Register now, as the sister said, please.
Yeah, and then after you've registered, please share the link amongst your social media network, family members, and friends. Thank you, Heru. Heru is saying, can't wait, can't wait. Absolutely fantastic. Well, you know, my brother Kheftusa, it's been another phenomenal presentation from yourself. Very deeply insightful one as well. You've given us a lot to go away and think about. We really do need to critique, you know, our psyche and analyze as well the information that we're getting in, because we've been pouring a lot of information, new information into the minds of our people. But is it reaching, you know, the place where the knowledge that we are sharing turns to action? So thank you for that. This is what we all need to really start thinking about now. And if all of the information that we are receiving is being turned into action, you know, what is the evidence of that? You know, what is the legacy that we're going to be leaving behind for our children, for the next generation? When they look back to this generation, what are they going to say about us? Are they going to say that, you know, wow, that generation has left us a legacy that we can use as a springboard so we don't no longer have to look to them for a job? But, you know, they've put in our mindset a culture of collectivism, and they've left the foundations on which we can start building in this country. You know, what is our legacy going to be? So we need to now not just get the information for information's sake, or to hear the lecture because it's a great lecturer who's delivering the information, but you know, we need to use the information now to start transforming our minds, because if we are of the right mind, then we will behave and our actions will be conducted accordingly. So absolutely phenomenal. Thank you so, so much. So everyone in the audience, it's been absolutely fantastic having you here tonight. And please do join me again next strong. Let me tell you who we've got coming up next strong. I think it's our brother Paul Abina that we have returning for a part 2. You all said, you know, he's got to come back, he's got to come back. So absolutely delighted that he's going to be coming back. And someone else who's going to be returning as well is our brother Leo Muhammad, who had the message for the black man. So we've got him lined up. And also we've got our brother, Dr. Rev Shop, who has done some new works and would like to share that with us. And, you know, it would be an honor and a privilege to have him share his new works with us as well. So some great lineup as always for you, our family. So yeah, make sure you keep it locked. So let me see, Tony Warner. It's going to be phenomenal. It's going to be phenomenal, family. So please do tune in next Wednesday. But I'll see you before then on Saturday, won't I? So let me allow our guests to have a final word and send us on our way today, just as we wrap up.
So, sorry. I wanted to say thank you greatly, sister. I labored with this lecture because part of my spirit said, don't do it.
Oh, really?
Because people will take offense. Because often when we go straight to the point, even when we're doing it gently, it can come across harsh. So I want to thank the audience tonight for proving me wrong, as from what I can see so far, because it is important that you understand that people that love you sometimes bring you messages that you find difficult to digest. Mm-hmm. But I wanted to end my statements in relation to the Caribbean people that came to this country, our parents and our grandparents. And I'm not going to lie, tears could flow down my eyes, but they won't. The reason being is because Sister Shanice spoke of the dignity of those Caribbean people, the way they dressed, the way they taught us to come out of our homes and represent our family names, the way in which they exhorted us to greatness in accordance with their level of understanding. These Caribbean people were warriors. And often when we talk of them, we talk about the bad memories, sometimes the beatings and the rest of it, but we fail to understand that the legacy of enslavement ran through their veins, their hearts, and their minds. But beyond that, they were able to teach us a culture that when we went to school, we were the politest children. We listened to elders. We respected our elders. We respected Black elders when we saw them on the street. If we cursed, we didn't curse around them. And so my statement to us is, like Sankofa, we must return back. We have lost our way culturally, and the way in which we get back is by revering them for what they did and adding on with the African experience, because what those people from the Caribbean brought was the remnants of African culture that had existed in the Caribbean. And that is what we must return to, because when I went to Ghana, I could see in the faces of the people, I saw my relatives. In the conduct of the people, I saw my relatives. And so as it was, so it will be. We will speak into existence and manifest that reality. And so we can return to the Africans that brought civilization to this world. And humbly, we suggest that our descendants will do greater than we will do and become greater than us. And Africa will rise again.
Oh, yes.
And have its place in the sun based on its own cultural identity. And so I say thank you to Sister Shanice and the audience for allowing me to express partly what was in me, but was delivered to you through me. And for that, I say, Hetep, Hotep,
Thank you,
peace.
Hotep. Thank you so, so much. We look forward to hearing from you again on Saturday. Family, we'll see you on Saturday. To everyone in the audience, thank you so, so much. And hopefully also I'll see you back here next Wednesday, same time, 8 p.m. UK time. We have our brother Paul Abina, who's going to be delivering. And then also the following Wednesday, the 14th of September, we have Dr. Winters in the house. And so it's going to be another phenomenal show. And so, my brother, Saturday, family in the chat, Saturday, stay strong, stay powerful.